What up, guys? Today I just want to make a quick video about something I think a lot of you find interesting. I know most of my subscribers are pretty avid outdoorsmen, which means a lot of you probably own old four-wheelers. This one in particular, it's a Yamaha Grizzly 450. I think it's a 2007. It's not mine, it's my father-in-law's, but we use it for ice fishing a lot and hunting and things of that nature and general goon riding. And anybody who owns old four-wheelers or snowmobiles is pretty familiar with carburetor issues. And that's exactly what this little guy had. So it was about a month ago, and this particular machine was having an issue with the seat in the carburetor, which is this right here. I don't know how well you can see it. Look at all that nice green focus. All that corrosion. That O-ring, nice and crusty. So what was happening was it was flooding out a lot, especially when I was sitting. And essentially the seat in the carburetor is what holds the needle and controls the floats. So if this is seizing up and stopping the needle from moving, the carburetor is going to fill with gas. Now, what happened to this four-wheeler that led us to no motor in machine and this nice mess is kind of a long story, but it's a chain of events that I think you guys need to understand. What I did not realize when that seat went bad on that four-wheeler was that the fuel shutoff valve for the gas tank also was leaking. So I think a lot of you understand you should probably shut your gas off anytime you're not using your wheelers or your sleds or whatever for a while. And that's to keep gas from pouring into the carburetor and getting in there and just generally getting it gummed up and seeping past the seat and whatnot. Now, what happened is that valve on the tank, I don't have the tank handy, it's right down here at the end of that hose is the valve. That valve leaked past. That leaked gas into the carburetor with a bad seat, which meant that the gas went up into the cylinder head, which is right here. That gas went into this tube. Now, that wheeler sat for several months, so it had a long time to percolate gas into it. It just so happened that when we parked the wheeler, that intake valve, the bigger one right there, was open. And that's not anything you're gonna check for when you park something. It is the odds. It's whatever it is. It really depends on what stroke the piston in it is in, you know. And we thought we were covered because we shut the gas off. Well, we weren't. That intake valve was open. Gas leaked into the cylinder to the top of the piston right here. Now, over time, piston rings are not a perfect seal. They have to have a little bit of gap in them so the piston can move up and down in the cylinder. That gas leaked past the piston and down into the crank. On this machine, and I know there's a lot like it, the transmission shares the same case as the crankcase. So here's your crankshaft. This is the motor side, and this would technically call it a gearbox because there isn't any shifting per se going on. You're just selecting a gear. The transmission is really the belt and the centrifugal clutches, which are on the other side here. But essentially, this is where your oil would be normally. And like I said, it shares the case, so it's all the same oil. Now, when that gas leaked in here, it filled the case. Now, normally, if I let a machine sit for a while, I'll check the oil before I go and ride it. We had just changed the oil on it before it sat. So I really wasn't thinking that that was going to be an issue. Now, if I had checked the oil, I would have seen that the oil level should have been here. It was probably up to here because of the amount of gas that had leaked into that case. So I swapped the seat in the carburetor. This guy right here, put a new one in, new O-ring and everything. And I fired it up, and it was actually running pretty good considering how much fluid was in the case. Don't think this case relies so heavily on pressures like a larger motor with multiple cylinders would. It's got a pretty simple oil pump right here that feeds this, which is like your intermediate shaft, which is this. And that leads me to what happened. I don't know if you guys can see that. I had this four-wheeler running about 10 minutes. I was idling mostly, trying to adjust that carburetor. It seemed to be running really well. I took this four-wheeler down that driveway, and I took it about 100 yards that way down the road to where I thought I was going to the trailhead. Here's the biggest mistake I made. Because I was just messing with it and trying to adjust the carburetor and get it tuned, I was not wearing a helmet. And that is something I should have never even sat on it without a helmet. I got this machine up to about 30 miles an hour. I'm not exactly sure. At 30 miles an hour, the gas in this crankcase heated up and the oil lost all its lubrication because of how watered down it was. And this gear, which rides on that shaft, got hot and welded itself to the shaft, stopping everything. As you can see, that spins your drive shaft, front and back. Here's the other critical thing that happened. I had accidentally bumped the four-wheel drive switch. On this machine, it's just that little guy right there. I had accidentally hit it while I was messing with the idle. Which means when that transmission locked up, the front wheels stopped spinning, and I went over the handlebars and flipped this about 3 times. So that's just a little lesson. I just want to show you guys. Obviously, always wear a helmet. And just because you think the machine just has carburetor issues, you really need to understand how all the systems are connected and how a simple, everyday carburetor problem can cause a mess like this that I am now dealing with. Overall, not too much stuff broken, but a lot of work for something I could have easily avoided by just checking the oil and realizing how much gas was in the crank. So, hope you guys learned something. More to come later this summer. We've got a lot of pre-hunting season stuff coming up, pre-ice fishing, and I think we're going to get more into the motorsports side of things. Oh my goodness, what is that? We picked up something. There might be some videos on that coming soon. And I think we're going to get some more sleds. So stick around. It's going to be an awesome year. Keep your stick on the ice.